Welcome to Clarity, a podcast powered by the Thomson Reuters Institute. I'm Zach Warren, the Institute's Technology and Innovation Insights lead. In each episode, we dive deep into a single question from decision makers and thought leaders from legal, corporate, tax accounting and audit, and government communities. In today's episode, we discuss the big question: how can tax firms harness technology to gain efficiency and growth? It's been repeated enough over the past several years that it's become a mantra. Tax professionals are lacking the resources to do their jobs. The hiring market is difficult, clients are demanding more for less, and the regulatory environment continues to be complex, especially with recent talk around tariffs. Technology can provide a panacea to some of those woes, but overcoming the resourcing and structural barriers around tech implementation is easier said than done. But that doesn't mean that it can't be done. From a recent report on the state of the tax, audit, and accounting professional, TRI's Nadya Britton talks with Allen Stahl, Director, Strategic Tax and Accounting Technology at Thomson Reuters, to discuss how to get to the tech-enabled future and how the tax professional of tomorrow might compare to tax professionals today.
Hi, again, I am Nadya Britton, and welcome to Clarity. I'm excited to be joined by Allen. Allen, welcome. And please tell the listeners a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Nadia, for having me. My name is Allen Stahl. I'm the Director of Strategic Technology for our Tax and Accounting Professionals Division. I work alongside a team of folks to help automate our tax processes for the accounting firms in all areas: tax, audit, advisory, any services that they provide. So I'm really happy to be here. I've been with Thomson Reuters since 2006, so it's a very long time. And I've learned a lot over that time, so glad to be here today.
Well, we're really thrilled to have you here because we've asked you here to help illuminate some of the findings from our recently released 2025 State of the Tax Professional Report. So, what I would love again, and what we love is your insights into how this translates to the real world, right? Because again, we've got the aggregate of 600 plus individuals who've taken the time to share what their strategic priorities were, what their challenges were. And again, you're working day in and out with firms. So, again, just not the insights from them, but just again, your expertise, right? In terms of how we might help these firms that have provided these insights and how again that they might go about approaching some of these things that are priorities for them. So thank you. So let's get started. For me, what stood out with this report this year was it being all about technology. In the 5 years I've done this survey, efficiency has always been, the top four. But what really stood out this year was about not just efficiency being number one, but the fact that firms were intentional about saying, so we know we need to use technology to help drive these efficiencies. And whether it's the way we work, but also in every aspect, right, of the business. We're looking at growth. We're looking at, solving for the talent challenge, which continues, um, and also giving our clients the services they want, and probably think about, and going back to that growth piece, things that they should be thinking about. So that's again, I'm really keen to get your insights into some of these findings and to get your thoughts. And so where I'd like to start with is automation. This is a question that we've asked year over year, and it's kind of interesting to see how the needle moves or don't move. And what we do is we ask firms about what percentage of your work is automated to date. In your workflow, what percentage? This year was actually great to see that about 70% of the respondents say that just about 50% of their workflow is automated. And that's actually good because it's up 5% from last year. So again, it's nice when I see like the needle move, and folks are again, I guess, attempting to be intentional about again how they're solving for driving more efficiency. So one thing that did come up, 45% of the respondents cited, the cost of implementing automation. Um, and difficulties around it. And so that's where I'd like to start, right? In the work that you've done and what you've seen, what are some of the things that you would suggest?
Um, as you know, the cost of change comes in many shapes and sizes. It's not easy for any firm to make a change decision. Change management in and of itself is very difficult. So you've got the cost of automating things, and you've also got the cost of changing people's current processes. Those two things combined uh, make people really stop in their tracks and say, I'm going to continue to do it like I've always done it. That's the easy and the safe way, right? So when I think about best practices to try to help overcome some of that mindset shift, right? It's around how do I go about creating a comfortable level of automation. So the first thing that we do a lot of times is we try to uncover where's the biggest pain point and what user group has that pain point. So when you automate things, you don't have to bite off the entirety of every part of the tax workflow process all at once. You try to fine tune where's the pain, and then how can we try to tackle that with a specific group of folks within your firm. So taking something extremely complex like your entire tax workflow, for instance, and then drilling down deeper into the one area of pain for a specific subgroup can help us say, all right, I think we can bite that off. It's not going to cost as much. It's not going to be as big of a change. And the change that you're solving for is actually a benefit. If you can solve that pain point, you can create additional champions in your office that help create buy-in from other groups to say, look at what I was able to accomplish and how I was able to do that to help drive even more change and more automation into other areas of your business. So it's like you're creating your champion change drivers by solving their pain one step at a time. And that's really how we've seen a lot of very successful firms work on making that shift to change management by showing the ROI in a small setting and then showing the cost and breaking that down even further as they go on.
Super helpful, and I that cannot, I think, be overstated. The whole notion of breaking it down into bite size as opposed to attacking the entire thing, because I do believe most people get into that part, right? We're just going to try to make the whole thing happen, and we're just going to go after it all at once, and probably the setup for things not going as well, right? Um, so thank you for that. So kind of staying in theme with that, before we move on to maybe what technology they should or not, um, one of the things that the respondents mentioned is about trying to utilize, more than half talked about, better utilizing the functions that they have of the technologies they currently have. And I thought that, well, A, that was insightful of them, right? In realizing that I'm probably not maximizing what I currently have. So what are some of the strategies, right, that firms might think about as, again, again, I said they're thinking about it, right? But how do you move from thinking about it to being strategic?
Oh, absolutely. I've been here a long time, and I will tell you, you don't know what you don't know about the products that you own. It's so hard for continued education. Firms like us are continuing to enhance the tools that are in your toolbox every single day based on customer feedback that we get. And so, how do you keep up with all of the change that's happening that are making these products better? And so, one is we do a pretty good job of ensuring that we focus on putting it, in front of the users in where the applications are. But from a strategic perspective, um, we do something a little bit broader, which is saying, how do you get the most out of your tools in your end-to-end workflow? And what we do is we do what we call process automation consultations. And these are just workshops that we'll go out and we'll spend 1, maybe 2 days, and we'll walk through the entire process end to end, from inception, from where you're getting your information from your customers, all the way back through to the end of the delivery process. And what we do is we try to map that out. A lot of firms don't do that mapping, but one of the things that we try to do is help them understand how you might be able to map out that entire process. So first, from a strategic perspective, make sure that you document and map out at a granular level your workflow end to end. If you do that, it's going to help you identify holes and pain points and areas of opportunity for you to then fix and address later. So that would be step one in my book of things to do. And then after you've done that, it comes down to having, I'll call it the strength to standardize, right? So much of what we do, we don't want to, rattle the tree, if you will. We want to just let people continue on with the status quo, and so shaking things up is very difficult unless you have a very strong leadership stance on standardization, because standardization will lead to being able to do a lot more with your data. So not only standardizing the process, but standardizing the functional tools that are going to fulfill that particular part of your process. And so if you do that, you document everything through what we call process maps. Then you can start to break down the data, understanding where the gaps are. And that's where we come in. We say, okay, now that we see this holistic picture of everything, and other people will probably do the same thing, but you'll want to take a look at how can I now automate the gaps that I have with the current technology that I have. Thomson Reuters has what we call an API first mindset, meaning if we're thinking about automation, whether it be RPA or different types of forms of automation, we will lead with an API centric automation because that's the one that's going to be less likely to have additional maintenance costs. RPAs come with a level of maintenance that you have to do on your own. APIs, once you get them set up and standardized in your process, they will continue to work for you for a very long time. So diving into those gaps, seeing where APIs can be plugged in, and then understanding the tools that you have. Most firms that I work with don't even know that APIs are offered in a lot of the technologies they have. They're just so used to going in and having that user experience on the front end. But that user experience process can likely be automated to a degree. And so reaching out, talking to your vendors, talking to your software providers, and finding out, okay, how can I get at my data more easily? And what APIs might you have available for me to be able to create more automation in my process? And then after that, we dive into showing you a little bit of what APIs in that workflow step would you want to plug in, uh, all the way down to the granular level. I have a team of experts that are way more sophisticated than me in understanding what API calls need to happen in order to make the connectivity exist between those applications. And they do a great job of sharing that with our customers and helping them drive forward with that automation change.
If I could ask you a follow-up question, because that was quite a bit of information and it sounds super important. And what you led with was basically mapping out what your current workflow process is in detail. Um, do you provide at the beginning, let's say, kind of an example of, or maybe like, okay, here's what you need to be thinking about? Because again, that can be quite intimidating, right? For someone, it's like, yeah, I know we use this technology for this, and I know we use it for that, but to say to them, okay, let's sit down and lay this all out in a way that it tells the whole story could be intimidating. So, is that something that you help folks develop?
Yeah, we do have a framework for how we go about that end-to-end walk, and a lot of times it's a matter of having to bring in a lot of different employees from your firm to help you identify where those gaps are. I will say that if you just get stuck talking to maybe a senior level manager or somebody at the top, they might see things a little bit differently than the person who is in the weeds in the day to day, who understands at that granular level at what's going on. And so we try to facilitate a walk through that by asking a lot of questions. And as you know, we're extremely familiar with the tax workflow end-to-end process, or audit workflow end-to-end process. And so we know what typical steps we might find. And we have frameworks and graphics that we can share to really get their minds thinking about what we're trying to accomplish as we walk through this full end-to-end look at what your firm is doing. So
Thank you. And this just prompted another thought because you mentioned change management a little earlier, and I want to give it some time, so to speak, because as you mentioned, it's probably some of the most difficult piece, right? Oftentimes in conversations I've had with folks, it's there's one person driving the technology mission of the department of the firm. And so you have some folks that might get it, others might not care. So yeah, just would like for you to chat a little bit more about the whole change management piece, its importance. And one of the things you mentioned just now was about pulling together different people, which made me think about it's not a one person thing, it's probably a team approach, right? For multiple reasons.
Absolutely. You might have somebody who has, the technology role within the firm, and their job is to tell you what the best form of technology is. But if you don't get buy-in at every level of the accounting firm, partners, directors, and managing partners even, to say yes, this is the direction we want to go as a firm, then that buy-in downstream will not occur. Right? You will get people who will revert back to just doing it the way they've always done it, because let's face it, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't, until you recognize that there's so much benefit to that change. And that's one of the things that I think AI and generative AI and automation brings forward for a firm, is like figuring out that there are new ways to start creating a better level of adoption and a culture of change, because our world around us continues to evolve, personally and professionally, in this area. And that personal level of accelerated adoption of I think is really strengthening. It's like a grassroots effort, really. The employees now are pushing forward and saying we need to do more to change, versus what used to be a top-down approach. So you've got both angles, but as long as you can get buy-in at that top level and stick to it, your cost of change is going to be drastically reduced, because you're gonna have everybody else follow suit.
Thank you. And I'm so glad, like perfect segue into this next point, because I did want to highlight that um, 2 years ago when we asked this question around AI and Gen AI, um, the first year it was like 6% of people like we might think about it, or we're not interested. Honestly, the bulk of the response is we're not interested. Like no, whatever that thing is. Um, Almost half this year believe that they need to incorporate AI, Gen AI, and they've made it actually one of the firm's top priorities, right? Um, which indicates again that it's their strong interest, to your point of using AI to gain productivity, client services, kind of again the whole approach. So let's go a little deep into that, right? I think you just started to touch on it. Ways in which integrating Gen AI or AI into their existing workflow. What can that look like? Whether it's enhancing productivity, client services. Can you speak to that?
Absolutely. Um, and I think half of the battle is really recognizing that, hopefully your software providers are doing a little bit of this for you, trying to remove some of that cost of change by implementing AI within our tools. Um, on the tax and accounting front, we do this quite often, and some of the changes that we uh, implement are called, well, foundational AI elements. These are things that are on the back end that you don't necessarily interact with from an AI perspective or a Gen AI perspective, but that bring true value through in your tax workflow. And so some of those examples are, I'll call it auto indexing, or auto categorization of all source documents that your clients provide you with. Um, the historic way this would play out is you would get all the, you would ask your customer to send you a bunch of documents. You'd have a document request list that they would need to go and get information for. Then they would send you a shoebox full of things, either scanned in as a PDF, one PDF, or multiple images or pictures. And then they would have to tie that information. So your clients would have to tie that information back to the actual document request list you sent. Auto categorization, which is an AI function in our tools, will automatically be doing that for you, so that everything you send in we tie it directly back to that document request list, removing the manual process that you would have had to do, and also notifying the preparers when that's completed. So half of the battle is knowing when do I get to start the work or what's next on the table. So that's just one element that's foundationally built in. But then, the other area is centered around the generative AI. How can you use that just in general in an experience model, right? Most folks can easily start out with, I'll call them low hanging fruit. You don't have a lot of risk involved in using it in this way. It's the communication angle, right? Many times you have to have different conversations with your customers, and a lot of times it's hard to know, how to craft that message. So large language models and generative AI is really great at being able to understand and craft at least a draft form of communication for you to then send out and get re-engaged with your customers via email or even newsletters or summaries that your firm might want to send out. So, some things that people are doing in that area seem to be easy, low-hanging fruit, which would have taken a lot of people a lot of time in the past. Um, and then another way is really, we call them experiences that are coming to life through generative AI or agentic AI. And these are the ones that are going to be the ones that help transform, right, the way you operate. And these are the ones that are the most exciting because they do bring about a level of change that is going to give you uh, unprecedented automation capabilities to help you achieve more in your day-to-day workflow. And so thinking about how those can take effect is really looking at um, an experience that's going to either help upskill more staff to be able to do more or um, help you uh, have more staff just understand more of the puzzle. I'll give you an example. Augmenting your tax research and analyzing research, right, is a big driving pain point that the industry is said is a major pain point for them. And it's one of the top areas in that report, I believe, in the first or second year, where they said, we think that AI can have a real impact here. And Thomson Reuters embedded a large language model into our content and research tool. So helping you get summarized information faster, taking it a step further and adding that generative agentic AI on top of that through what we call co-counsel for tax. That is where not only are you getting, the ability to talk to that information, but it's going to summarize it and it's going to cite it and it's going to ground it in the trust that you need to know exactly what you're looking at. And then it's going to allow you to do comparative analysis against your data. So instead of you having to be reactive and figure out what regulations changed and how do those impact my clients, you'll be able to get that information surfaced to you through this agentic model, which is going to help guide you into saying, all right, here is my impacted customers. And because of this regulation change, you may want to look here to find new opportunities to serve your clients better. And I think that's really critical. It's like getting you out of the manual, mundane tasks and getting every person in your office kind of prepared to be able to have advisory level conversations is what these tools are giving us the capabilities to do.
Glad you said that because that was definitely another strong theme for this year's report was around growth and firms talking about being intentional about how they strategically approach it and spot on, right? They have thoughts that we know in some ways technology might be able to help, but I think you just did a great job of describing that kind of whole picture. You do all of this, you automate your workflows. Again, I can help you even analyze that data. So then you can now have interesting conversations with your clients and again, bringing in that client service piece, right? Um, so as you would speak to, I'm sure many firms will say clients is really at the center of what they do. Um, a challenge that came up or we asked about was around have you figured out a way to, how do you quantify, right? What's the ROI? You're talking about doing technology, you want to do all these things, um, but how do you measure it? Do you have a standard way of measuring it? And most of the respondents said No, I mean, it sounds good, but no. I think 19%, if that much, said we do actually have a formal way. And so, can you speak to that? What should firms be thinking about? How can they measure um, these technologies, whether it's AI or any agentic AI, if they're looking at it? How can they help create an ROI?
So I'll start at a high level, and I'll give you kind of my thoughts around an easy way to kind of put this into a perspective for a firm. I call it the three E's. Um, so the way I approach it is you need efficiency, you need effectiveness, and you need expansion. And efficiency is going to help you streamline processes. It's going to be the thing that's going to reduce waste, and it's going to accomplish more with less, because we know you're going to need to be able to do more with less. There are a lot less folks coming into our industry today than there were yesterday, and so you can break that down further, and a very specific metric you might be able to look at could be centered around staff capacity, right? If you're looking to get deep into one area, you'd take and you'd say, okay, are my staff increasing the work that they're doing year over year, month over month, after embedding AI into their workflow process or automation into that workflow process, and is that giving them more efficiency? And the second one was effectiveness. So now we're going to ensure not only that you're being efficient, but you're being effective. You're ensuring accuracy. You're delivering actionable insights. You're becoming more of a professional advisor than you are just a typewriter of movement of data type of person. And you can that one's a little bit tougher to measure, but the way I would measure it is impact on time. So when you start tracking, you know, time to complete a tax return or an audit or whatever it may have been, that's where you're going to start to say, okay, you know how long it takes today, and you need to track the before and after, and then not just track it one time, but track it over time, month over month, year over year, as you grow. Continue that historical track record of how it's applying, and see how effective you're becoming. And then lastly was expansion. So as you think about expansion, this is about leveraging all the extra time that you might have to think about new ways you can grow your business, new offerings you might be able to provide, additional markets or clients you might be able to go and tackle, right? If you're getting all of these other things to happen, you should have the opportunity to expand. So start looking at whether or not this is happening across your business at all. And it might be organic, and you might not necessarily see it from the top down, but you might start to see it organically happen, and gradually work its way up to the top and say, okay, how are we growing? So you have to dive into the growth a little bit to understand whether or not there's expansion, new service offerings, like what's impact, what's the granular impact of how this could impact you. And I think those are the three that I've really honed in on, like talking with customers about, because it is very difficult, as you said, to try to measure these things in the traditional way, historically, because the capacity or the capabilities of generative AI go beyond the existing tax workflow into new ways of thinking and extremely new ways of creating new use cases that we've never thought of before. So lots there, and I could probably speak longer on that, but I think there's a ton of information that you can.
So, let's see, how or when should firms start to look at, implement, think about, right? Most have just went through busy season. When is a good time to start, if ever?
Yeah, it comes back to that cost of change, right? There is always going to be a person in your office that's going to say now's not the right time. Um, but what I am hearing, and we have uh, formulated a coalition of firms that are on the front of AI to work with Thomson Reuters and help drive our vision forward in the tax and accounting space. And they're extremely excited, but they recognize this. They're also very anxious about the fear of missing out, right? Because if you don't start to implement some form of AI soon, there are going to be folks that are going to surpass you. They're going to be offering their clients things that are different, unique, at a faster pace than you. And so you've got to kind of level set on understanding there's never going to be a great time. So you just kind of have to dive in and try to figure out what pain points does my firm need to try to solve for first. And if you can create clarity on around 5 to 10 of your major pain points that you want to solve, most of the time, our tools, our people are here to help you figure out, okay, let's dive into those and let's put them to use inside our agentic solution, and let's see if we can make that come to life through an improvement in your current process. And most of the time, you can. Say AI is agnostic to the tax and accounting industry, so there's tons of opportunity to dive into our tools and make it work for many different use cases, not just tax or audit or advisory. A lot of times we have internal teams using it for HR needs or for IT service needs, whatever it may be. It runs the gamut inside an accounting firm as to how you can apply it to different groups within your firm.
Wow, that's great. Was there anything that we didn't touch on that you think that this audience would find interesting or really should consider that we might not have touched on or you wanted to expound on?
The only thing I will say we probably didn't touch on is this idea of trust and security, right? When dealing with AI, in general, there's this skepticism or this fear of, trusting it and letting it have access to your data, because everybody thinks that their data is going to go out into the World Wide Web and be available to everybody. And so I can say that the way that Thomson Reuters has approached AI in the tax and accounting space is by not training any of our solutions against your data, ensuring security, and really fully grounding our solution in trusted content and authoritative content that's going to help you be able to see exactly how the AI solution is leveraging what you're feeding it. And it's only for your use. So hopefully we can throw some confidence in there that right now is the time where we feel like we've gotten everything honed in on being secure, trusted, and safe. Using solutions that are not market centric, you run the risk more so of falling into a solution where you don't know what it's doing with your data. So that would be my 2 cents on that topic. Ask some questions to them and get your security teams involved to make sure that you're getting the right tools that are going to meet your needs.
That's really important, and thank you for closing us out on the security piece. That cannot be overstated, right? So thank you. Allen, it's great chatting with you. Thank you again for all of your insights and wonderful advice that I know that our listeners will really appreciate.
Thank you, Allen and Nadya, for your insights. I think most tax firm leaders know that there's not a single one-size-fits-all solution to talent and resourcing issues. But it is clear they're looking to technology to help. And as the technology becomes more powerful, and crucially, as firms understand how it fits into their own workflows and long-term strategic planning, the tax professional of the future will indeed look different than it does today. Thank you as always for joining us for Clarity, powered by the Thomson Reuters Institute. You can follow or subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform, and don't forget to share with your colleagues and leave a 5-star review. For more data-driven analysis of today's professional services market and in-depth conversations with industry thought leaders, visit us online at thomsonreuters.com/institute and follow us on LinkedIn under the Thomson Reuters Institute. Clarity is a production of Thomson Reuters, copyright Thomson Reuters 2025.